Hi everyone, so today I'm going to be articulating this beaver spine. I'm starting out by drilling each and every one of the vertebrae. The hardest part about this is trying to get the angle right and trying to drill in the same spot of each vertebrae, although it's not the biggest deal if they're a little off. A few of the holes that I drilled were really off, and I had to do some finagling and when I was putting it together, but overall it's a pretty easy process. Once you get all of your pieces drilled, you just start stringing them together. So actually I lied. I guess the hardest part might be putting all the pieces together in order, kind of like a little puzzle. I've been doing this long enough that I find it pretty intuitive, and it tends to be pretty easy, especially if you set them out in the right way and you know what you're looking for. It's pretty easy to tell which vertebrae go in which order. But if you don't, then looking up a reference is always a good idea. There's always our good friend Google, but if you'd like to invest in better materials, I am a big fan of the Bone Man's bone building books. I have the Small Mammal Guide myself, and I find it incredibly useful. I use it really often when I am doing articulating. And if I'm ever unsure about the placement or the order of my bones, I can always go and reference that book, and it's really nice. So here I'm starting the process of putting all of the vertebrae onto this silver wire that I'm using. I'm using a 20 gauge wire, although the holes that I drilled are 18 gauge. So I really would have preferred to use an 18 gauge wire for a tighter fit, but 20 gauge worked just fine, and that's what I had on hand, so I went ahead and used it. I put the wire all the way through the very last vertebrae on the tail, and then at the end I took about maybe a couple centimeters of the wire, and I just bent it around and up the bottom of the vertebrae, so that way it had this little hook for the vertebrae to sit on, so it wouldn't fall off the wire while I'm stringing everything on top of it. So once I've strung all of the tail bones onto the wire, and how many bones you're dealing with here will depend on what species you are articulating. This guy only had 3 tail bones, so that is what I attached. I left about an inch of excess wire sticking out of the top, so that way I could insert that wire into the hole that I had drilled into the bottom of the sacrum and glue it into place. I will then, in a moment, glue and insert the other wire into the top of the sacrum, where I will string the rest of the vertebrae on top. Once you get to this step, it is really helpful if you have already organized all of your vertebrae, so that way they are all in the exact order that you'll be placing them. It'll make this process a lot quicker and a lot more enjoyable if you aren't having to sift through all of your vertebrae, placing them, and then having to replace them with different ones because you got it wrong the first time. It's just a lot easier if you get it prepped beforehand. So I like to organize my bones before I even start drilling, so that way they are all in order and I can just go right down the line and pop them onto the wire. During this process, you're also going to want to make sure that you're placing your vertebrae carefully. So rather than just dropping them down carelessly on the wire, I'm going through and I'm making sure that they're sitting well together, making sure that they fit well, making sure that they're in the correct order, and just generally making sure that I'm happy with the quality of it as I'm going. So that way, if there are any issues, I can correct it before I'm all finished and I don't have to take the entire thing apart to try to fix some mistake that I made, way towards the beginning. So once you're done, your spine should look something like this. And to finish it off, I just use a few dollops of glue at the very bottom where the wire sticks out of the tail vertebrae and at the top where the wire sticks out of the first cervical vertebrae. I also glue the atlas vertebrae on because it has a very thin spot that makes it difficult to drill through. So I use glue there, and then I just leave enough excess wire at the top that I can form a little loop and wrap it around itself so that it can be hung up. And it's all done.